The government and modern medical science currently have no clear answer for COVID-19 beyond supportive care. Our systems have failed us, and we are in an existential crisis as a country, a society, and even as a civilization. Like in the human body in severe cases, is the response worse than the disease? In a way, we've been lucky. We're lucky it wasn't SARS with its 9% mortality rate, or MERS with over 30%. Where would we be then? Where will we be if COVID-19 has a second deadlier wave like in 1918? We are not ready by a long stretch, and we're proving that with our almost medieval response to this outbreak. People with no sign of infection are told to wash their hands, cover their mouths when they sneeze or cough. They're told to practice social distancing or to shelter in place to avoid exposure. Those with mild symptoms are instructed not to seek in-person medical attention. They're told to wash their hands, cover their mouths when they sneeze or cough, self-quarantine, stay hydrated, and to take over-the-counter analgesics or NSAIDs as necessary. Those with more severe symptoms might get medical attention, and depending on the severity and availability of beds, they might be hospitalized. If they're sent home, they will be given the exact same instructions. If they're hospitalized, they will be masked and isolated to avoid aerosolized transfer. They could be put on oxygen, they'll be kept hydrated, and they'll be given over-the-counter or prescription analgesics or NSAIDs as necessary. In extreme cases, they may be put on ventilators despite the legitimate concern about aerosol-generating procedures. Apart from the desperate search of our existing catalog of drugs in hopes of finding something that might work, right now we have no answer but to tell people to hide in their homes as we willfully and possibly irreversibly damage our global economies and societies in hopes of flattening the curve and keeping our healthcare systems from collapsing. Hi, my name is Casey Gleason. Understandably, frontline healthcare professionals right now are looking for answers. Now, I'm not a doctor, an immunologist, or virologist, but as an epidemiologist, from my point of view and with history as my guide, effective therapies will probably arrive too late to be of any help in this outbreak. And this is a war, with our way of life hanging in the balance. And to win a war, you don't keep sending up your planes to do battle with the enemy's planes, in hopes that you can win a war of attrition. To win the war, you go after their planes while they're on the ground, on the airstrips and the factories. This war needs to be waged in the lungs. And rushing something through to the rescue could be a dangerous game to play. The potential of mutations, even in preference in receptors, is very real. Let's face it, we've only scratched the surface where it concerns our understanding of viruses. And we have never in our lifetimes faced a crisis of this magnitude before. Urgency, yes, but we still should tread carefully. With that in mind, I propose a potentially helpful solution that isn't likely to pose any grave risk, should be safe for human use both as a therapeutic treatment and as prophylaxis, is an indiscriminate killer of microbes. It doesn't need to wait for development or laboratory testing. I will demonstrate that this work has already been done, hopefully to enough of a degree that you can take it to the next level. And this is a war, with our way of life hanging in the balance. The weapon is hypochlorous acid, the same compound produced through degranulation by neutrophils during respiratory burst. Our own bodies make HOCl to kill pathogens, and the HOCl attacks the first thing the neutrophil puts it in contact with. One of the most likely victims is going to be cysteine residues in the viral envelope and capsid. Used as a product externally, the HOCl molecule hasn't just been proven to not harm human tissue, it's been shown to promote healing. It's believed by some that the healing properties come as a result of some of the amines that are formed after HOCl oxidizes or chlorinates proteins. Others believe that the presence of HOCl moderates other cytotoxic activities of neutrophils during injury or infection, either by decreasing viral load or through signaling. That can be a lot of fun for later study, but the important thing here is that that's what's happening. Not tissue damage, but promotion of healing. And it does this while killing pathogens at a rate that's some 80 to 100 times more effective than hypochlorite or chlorine bleach. In recent years, HOCl has received FDA approval for use on skin and is widely used by piercing salons and tattoo artists to prevent infection. It's used as open wound care for both animals and humans. It's widely used by veterinarians and is slowly gaining favor among medical professionals. It's used in and around the eyes and is becoming more widely recommended and used by ophthalmologists. And it's used in the mouth and is becoming more widely used by dentists and orthodontists. It's FDA approved for use in the food industry as a non-toxic and generally regarded as safe food-grade antimicrobial treatment for the foods that we buy and eat. In disaster areas, it's used to treat water as well as medical tents and shelters for the sick, injured, and displaced. Now, I'm not selling anything here, and I'm not affiliated with any company that makes this product. Several years ago, I interned at a local company called Briotech that makes HOCl. And while there, I researched the molecule extensively, particularly its ability to deactivate infectious prions that are implicated in causing mad cow disease and CJD. Since that time, I've become a believer in what it can do. I'm a dedicated user and advocate for HOCl. I've been waiting for years for this molecule to change the healthcare world, but along with every other aspect of our system, we have another preparedness failure that we can analyze later. The reasons HOCl hasn't been considered to this point, even prior to this outbreak, are fairly simple to understand. It's not commonly accepted as a therapeutic for the following reasons. Number one is a dogmatic belief that it's too reactive to be stabilized or made shelf-stable in a bottle. Do you remember when ulcers were still a big thing? Everyone's uncle seemed to have one. They were caused by stress and poor diet, or so we were told. But when two doctors started searching for other causes, their peers told them they were wasting their time. They discovered a new bacterium during their research, and they hypothesized that it was an infection that was causing the ulcers. But nobody believed them. So to prove the point, one of the doctors cultured a cocktail of the new bacteria and drank it. And you know what happened next? That's right, they won the Nobel Prize for Physiology in 2005. And yes, he got an ulcer and cured it with antibiotics. And HOCl has been stabilized. The second reason is the dogmatic belief that HOCl is only cytotoxic. We're only just learning everything neutrophils do. It wasn't even known that HOCl was produced by them until fairly recently. Yes, HOCl has an affinity for thiols that are present in cell membranes, but those thiols are also present in viral envelopes and capsids. And considering this is a naturally occurring compound, our bodies know what to do with it. Recent research is showing that the presence of HOCl serves as a cell signal to create thiol-containing proteins like glutathione and serotonin, among others, which act as scavengers of excess HOCl and substantially reduce cytotoxicity. Recent studies are showing that HOCl promotes wound healing as well as killing pathogens. The third reason is a dogmatic reliance on complex chemical compounds as the only possible answer. And when nothing's wrong, it's hard to convince anyone of anything. Our collective arrogance is now evident as we are brought to our knees by a tiny bug that can barely be seen with a microscope. And the fourth reason is that HOCl can only be used topically, which is also a dogmatic belief. Again, HOCl is widely used by veterinarians for various purposes, both internal and external. It's used by ophthalmologists both in and around the eye, by dentists in the mouth, and it's used in open wounds. Its ability to end MRSA infections is becoming more well known. But since it can be used on epithelium, mucosa, and other subdermal tissues, and not only not cause damage but promote healing, why shouldn't it be explored for treatment of infection in the upper and lower respiratory systems? The fifth reason is that it isn't commercially available in sufficient quantities. Unfortunately, this one is absolutely true. There's only a handful of small cap companies in the world that make it. And the sixth reason, it's an environmental cleaning product. That one is also true, but I'm doing my best here to convince you that this should be looked at as a therapeutic agent with patients as well. And the seventh reason, healthcare protocols shun aerosol generating procedure. so treating the lungs isn't considered. The way to effectively use this compound to combat this virus countermands a part of your recently published protocol that was so important to mention that it was brought up twice. So medical professionals aren't likely looking at anything anywhere near what I'm suggesting, out of fear of making the outbreak even worse than it is. But from where I sit, this war has to be won in the lungs, and that means we have to treat the lungs. And the final reason is compartmentalization in this fight. Everyone in their specialty, from frontline medical workers to virologists to geneticists to everybody else, is getting absolutely run over right now in their field. And comparatively few people are looking at this problem globally. It's time to think globally, and it's time to go out on a limb and try something. What we have right now is a lot of likely false hopes that some existing drug will help, or that some new drug will be developed before it's too late. And if history's our guide, there may never be a vaccine. There isn't one for SARS after 18 years. There isn't one for MERS after 3 outbreaks over the past 8 years. I'm not optimistic, and I'm not holding my breath. I have 2 problems with the drugs that are being looked at and those that are being developed. One is that they don't kill viruses. We need to kill this virus. Because my second problem is that the longer we let this outbreak rage and the more we tinker with roadblocks, the higher the likelihood of mutations. We need to stop it by killing it, not by putting obstacles in its path. Like sugar ants, they will find another way in, and that worries me as much as anything else. HOCl destroys viruses and bacteria indiscriminately. Several years ago, I began using it myself for every cut and scrape. I used it in my throat when I felt a cold or flu symptoms coming on. I used it to clear a pernicious infection in the injured eye of a friend that weeks of antibiotics wasn't helping. And a deep necrotizing grapefruit-sized MRSA infection in his mother's leg that went nearly to the bone, that wasn't responding to any treatments, and doctors were preparing her that they would have to amputate in order to save her life. HOCl cleared the biofilm in less than 2 days, and the entire wound was healed inside of 2 weeks. So in addition to killing pathogens, we have healing. Neutrophil overreaction is possibly moderated by the addition of external HOCl, resulting in less cytotoxicity and not more. Whether that occurs due to HOCl's presence or because of reduced viral or bacterial loads isn't exactly clear. I guess we'll have some research to do when this outbreak is over. In any event, HOCl's presence is transient when introduced externally, only for as long as the treatment lasts. It reacts with other substances that fast. If administered by nebulizer, chances are that every HOCl molecule that was introduced has already reacted and is no longer present in the body by the time you take the mask off of the patient's face. It's time to take this fight to the virus. HOCl is an indiscriminate killer of pathogens, and that has been proven time and time again in peer-reviewed research. It doesn't cause tissue damage, but actually promotes healing, probably because of its ability to moderate neutrophil activity, preventing the cytokine storm and lowering viral load, which allows the immune system to get the upper hand on this invader.